Welcome to The Great Search Shift, a conversation with Neil Patel. My name is Phillip Thune. I'm the CEO of Adthena, the leader in search intelligence, and we'll get into exactly what that means as we go along. Neil, I think it's fair to say that you've kind of shaped search marketing to a certain extent in terms of all the advice and everything that you kind of put out there to tell people. Neil has millions of followers, constantly putting out content about what's happening in search, what's happening in digital marketing, what you should do about it. And then your agency, NP Digital, named by Ad Age Best Performance Marketing Agency. So there's really nobody better I'd love to talk to about kind of the shifting in search than you.
Oh, thank you. Those are all kind words. I don't know how much of an impact I really had on the whole sector of the community, but I appreciate the kind words nonetheless.
Well, so let me set the stage. First of all, let's start with looking backwards. So in 2000, I joined a company called FindWhat.com. We provided pay-per-click search ads. We actually did it before Google. Google switched to PPC in 2001. I think in 2001, you kind of got your start, right? You had your own company and you were looking for marketing advice and you were very frustrated that it wasn't very good. And that's when you decided to kind of dive into search.
Correct.
So I don't want to look, like I said, I don't want to look back to reminisce, but I think there's, history repeats itself, or at least sometimes it rhymes. What are some of the things that you think about what was happening back then that sort of informs this kind of crazy time we're in now?
Yeah, so back then you had change. You're still having change with algorithms. It's just change is happening faster because it's quicker for people to code, whether using Cursor or Claude Code or whatever they're using. But the big thing that Google tried to do early on was test things like insurance leads or airplane tickets and selling these kind of things on Google so you wouldn't have to leave to go to Kayak or Expedia or whatever the platform was. We're starting to see that all over again. And you're starting to see that because Instagram and TikTok allow you to do shopping on platform and you stay there. So they not only get the conversion, they still have the eyeballs, they didn't lose it to a website, and then hopefully they can monetize you again. LLMs, I believe, they already are trying to do some of the same thing. If you look at ChatGPT and their partnership with Shopify and Stripe, it's another way to keep people on platform. And when you think of platforms from back in the day, Google really wanted to organize the world's information and try to answer your question as efficient as possible. Now, a lot of that is a real reality because of AI. Right? Because when we were searching back in the day, it would be 2-3 words, 4 or 5 words max, and then you see what you get, and then you fine tune from there. Now you type in sentences or paragraphs, and it tells you exactly what you're looking for. The more detailed you get, hopefully the better of an answer that you end up getting. So I think some of what happened, or some of the goals that these platforms had 20 plus years ago, are starting to come to reality. And if you think about it back in the day, remember we had multiple search engines, AltaVista, Lycos, Ask Jeeves, Yahoo, which still exists.
And then you had
MSN.
You had Metacrawler and Dogpile, which were meta search engines.
That's correct. And it just kept going and going and going. And then we actually were in a time period, if you go back 6-7 years ago, there was actually less players.
Right.
Now, if you go to today's world, China is trying to stop the transaction from Meta acquiring one of their most popular AI companies.
Right.
And if you look at what's happening now is we have tons and tons of platforms all over again. Perplexity, Claude. I think Salesforce owns like U.com or something like that, which is another LLM type of player. There's the list just keeps going on from, outside of just the Chat GPTs, and Perplexities and Claude.
Based on what you saw back then, that was one of the main things I agree with as well, right? You had all these search engine players, and then I don't know, 2004, maybe 2005, 2006.
Yeah,
a lot of them faded away because Google was just so dominant. We're going to get into predictions later, but I think there is a parallel here that I just can't imagine that there's a place for consumers, at least, to have Grok and Perplexity and Claude and
There's
ChatGPT and Gemini, right? Too many.
But here's what's changed versus before. Governments are way more strict on these big corporations acquiring each other. Not as much as they were in the past.
Right.
Do you remember the Mark Zuckerberg testimony or Facebook testimony? Because they're complaining how they have too much monopoly on social networks with Instagram and WhatsApp.
Right.
And he's just like, or the Meta team was like, congressman or congresswoman, whoever it was, they were just like, you approved these acquisitions, know, and now they have an issue and they don't care.
Right.
I'm not saying the government's right or wrong or Meta's right or wrong, but if you look at the European Union and the US, which are the main two bodies that people really look at when they're trying to buy these companies, most of them are getting denied. And what you see now is you're going to have a plethora of options, and I don't think you're going to have the consolidation anytime soon.
Right. Well, let's save that for the predictions, kind of what happens to some of these other LLMs. One other thing I wanted to call out, which, again, I think history repeating itself. So in the early days of Google, from everything I heard, Larry and Sergey were not fans of ads. And just the internet in general was like search, right? So just, again, a bit of a history lesson. The company that came up with search ads was a company called GoTo.com, changed their name to Overture, got bought by Yahoo. They started that in 1998. And the internet was, what? The internet's supposed to be free. You can't do advertising, And I think with Google, they were kind of reluctant. And then they're like, well, we have to monetize this amazing user growth somehow. And so, search ads were born.
And they had a fine from Overture or Yahoo because of the patent.
The patent, right. Yeah. As FineWith.com, we had to deal with that patent as well. So you've heard Sam Altman say, ads. No, I can't see how we could have ads. This has to be a trusted LLM. People, don't want to see ads. He's had to shift that, right, to figure out how to pay for this. Claude runs a Super Bowl commercial. We're never going to run ads. I mean, I think
they're more enterprise, though.
Right. If you have a huge amount of free users, which Claude doesn't have, right? If you have a huge amount of free users, is there any doubt in your mind that what we saw back then kind of has to happen going forward?
It does, because majority of people aren't willing to pay. Now, Claude's revenue growth is faster than OpenAI's, right, and they're generating more revenue. And an announcement came out today. OpenAI is missing revenue targets. So Oracle stock tanked as we're recording this because of that. NVIDIA and a lot of the chip manufacturers are going down, at least today, because of that news. If everyone was willing to pay $10 a month or $5 a month, there wouldn't be this problem. But the reality is people could say they hate ads, but majority are not willing to pay to not have ads.
Right.
YouTube has that option. They've had it for ages. Don't see ads, pay us money. That model isn't a successful model. It doesn't mean you can't make money. You make more money through ads because the majority of people just don't want to pay, period.
Right.
So you don't have a choice other than to showcase ads, whether you like it or not. And that is what ChatGPT is doing. And they will have to more and more. I don't think Claude will, unless they have a massive free user base using their product like OpenAI, which they don't. Most people use Claude, as from my interactions with people and companies as they travel throughout the world. It's mainly used on the corporate end, to create efficiencies, not actually to do searches as much like ChatGPT.
Right. And then I think the thing we're all waiting for is Gemini, right? I assume Gemini will show ads at some point. It's funny, at first they said, no, we have no plans, and then they backed off a little bit. This is a few months ago, but yeah, I would assume Gemini shows ads.
Just a question of when.
Just a question.
The difference between a Google and a Claude and an OpenAI, because yes, Claude is growing really fast. Last numbers reported were, I believe, $30 billion in revenue, so it's probably more now.
Right.
I believe that was end of March or somewhere around there. They're still losing money. Revenue and profit are two very different things. Google, the last time I was looking at their stock, I believe their profitability run rate, if you go use a last quarter's number going forward, or you average it out with their growth rate, they're on track for something like $140 billion a year in profit, right, USD. That's so much money. You can just give away Gemini for free. And then once it has enough users, then you can worry about monetizing it. And they've all done this. You remember Teams? Teams used to be fully free. And I had a lot of people tell me, use Teams, it sucks compared to Slack. Well, Teams was free. Well, as a corporation, who cares if Slack is a little bit better? I'd rather take the free product being a business owner. And most organizations did. I'm not in the startup world as much. I'm mainly in the corporate world or enterprise world. When we have calls with most of our clients, or they set up calls with us, almost always, everyone chooses Teams.
Interesting.
Free, right? Okay. It's a great way to penetrate. And then eventually they figure out how to charge and offset some of the costs.
Right. No, I think it's a good point. Gemini doesn't have the money pressure that ChatGPT and maybe some of the others will have, so they can take their time. But it does seem inevitable. I thought the other interesting thing that's happened today, and go back to, I think, January or February when ChatGPT announced they were going to have ads, but only for free users or people on the low-cost plan. The internet got upset. Oh, it's going to, it has to have an impact on the product. Look at what's happened with Meta or anybody else who's had ads. I don't know what these folks expect. Like it costs, hundreds of billions of dollars to run these things. You expect it to be free with no way to monetize. So I thought that was an interesting parallel, though, to the early days of search.
Yes, but it doesn't really have that much of an impact.
Yeah.
And if it did, Facebook wouldn't be popular still, and Instagram wouldn't be popular, and nor would Google. So you can say it reduces the quality. Well, if it reduced it so much, you would probably go find another alternative to use. But wait. You're not. Claude has no ads. Yet majority of people still use ChatGPT when they have ads. You agree with this, right? Like when you ask any random person, do you find most of them use Claude for searching or ChatGPT if you had to pick one?
Right, it's ChatGPT.
Exactly. Yet they have ads. We see ads right now everywhere on it.
Right.
And people still use it.
Yeah. So, no, I think hopefully that historical context helps. So want to move now to what's happening today. And let's talk about kind of the search shift that's happening right now.